Good afternoon. Today is March the 28th. This is the Government Operations and Health Facilities Subcommittee of the Health and Government Operations Committee. I'm Delegate Ken Kerr, Chair of the subcommittee. Today we are going to take up two bills, and we will start with House Bill 957. Lindsay Rowe is here with us today, Committee Counsel. She will review the bill for us. Lindsay?
So as introduced, the bill establishes state residency requirements for apprentices and employees on state contracts. The Maryland Department of Labor is responsible for enforcing the bill's requirements, and any costs incurred to administer the bill must be paid from the State Apprenticeship and Training Fund. Contractors found in violation of the bill's requirements are subject to financial penalties and debarment. I circulated amendments from the bill sponsor that limit the application of the bill to covered large projects, meaning public work contracts subject to the prevailing wage law valued at $5 million or more, located only in Anne Arundel, Baltimore, Howard, Montgomery, and Prince George's counties and Baltimore City. It says that the bill does not apply to state contracts for which the federal government provides money. The amendments alter definitions, make the only residency requirement that a contractor for a covered large project must ensure that 35% of the apprenticeship hours are performed by state residents, authorizes contributions in lieu of fulfilling the apprentice requirements to be made to the State Apprenticeship and Training Fund, in addition to, or as another option, the Registered Apprenticeship Program. Authorizes a contractor that exceeds the residency hour requirements on a contract to apply those hours to another covered contract within 2 years after completion of the first contract. Decreases the financial penalty for failing to meet the requirements of the bill, and authorizes debarment if a person is found to have violated the requirements 5 times in a 10-year period rather than just twice. So I circulated these amendments in a reprint, and I wanted to call your attention to the provision that I just described relating to applying the excess hours to a future contract within 2 years. There's just a couple of technical changes, I think, to that need to be made to that section. One is that it starts, if you're looking at the reprint, page 7 after line 23, a contractor that exceeds the requirements of 17.6B03A or B. B is just the reporting requirement, so I think that should just say A and take out the or B. And then there are further down in that references to the amount of apprenticeship hours and journey worker hours, and the journey worker hour requirement was struck by the amendments, so I think that those two references could also come out. And this section could probably be reworded to be a little bit clearer with regard to applying those overages to a future contract. And I know that DGS received these amendments. I don't think that they're on the call, but they had suggested that that could be reworded to be a little bit clearer as well.
Okay, thank you. The subcommittee will recall that we took this up just before crossover, and there were a couple of things that still needed to be negotiated. Those have been incorporated into the amendments that Lindsay just referenced, but we have Teron from Chairman Wilson's office. Can you verify that the negotiations have been worked out with all of the people who had concerns about the bill?
Thank you, Chairman Kerr. We can confirm that. We spoke with procurement as well as MDOT as well as MDOL, and we got their good graces on the bill as amended.
Okay, sounds good. Does someone want to move the amendments?
Move the amendments. Do you want me to move Lindsay's amendments and along with the printed amendments? Move them all together?
Yeah, let's move them all together and see if anybody has anything to talk about that. Okay. Do we have a second on the amendments?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on the amendments? Delegate Chisholm.
I just want to make sure I understand. I know that Lindsay went through some Anne Arundel County, Baltimore City, Baltimore County, Howard County. What does this contractors awarded a state contract that is a covered large project located in? So only the covered large projects in these counties. Is there a reason for that?
Yeah, one of the objections from MDOT and DGS and from the Association of Builders and Contractors was that if we required the Maryland worker provision on a smaller project or a project that was in rural part of Maryland, let me just use, for example, Garrett County. You're probably going to not find a Maryland contractor there. It's more likely to be a Pittsburgh-based contractor. So they wouldn't be able to fulfill the contract. And if they were to use a Maryland contractor, the cost of the contract would go up exponentially. So what we did with a compromise was we limited it to counties with populations over 300,000 and projects over 5 million.
Okay, it's just interesting to me that the bill sponsors county's not in here, but okay. I understand the impetus behind the amendment.
Okay, thank you. Delegate Shalega?
Tell me which counties those are, please.
It's Anne Arundel County, Baltimore City, Baltimore County, Howard County, Montgomery County, and Prince George's County.
Delegate Hill?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I understand you defined it geographically, a population and population wise rather, but I do think Delegate Chisholm makes an excellent point. And since we don't define how those counties are chosen, is there a reason why we wouldn't put the county, because he particularly seemed to think this was a problem in his county? So is there a reason we wouldn't put the sponsors county in the bill?
Because the county's under 300,000 population and it doesn't make them.
Well, so the question was, that was sort of arbitrary, and I don't think the bill defines that that's how we're coming up with these counties. That may be how we came up with them, but it doesn't define that they have to be. So I'm suggesting that, and I don't know, were these gone over with the sponsor? And if we ask him, would he be fine with his county before we get to a committee vote? I'm actually suggesting that, I guess.
I
Okay.
would entertain a motion to add Calvert County or Charles County to the list.
But
May I add? May I say anything?
yeah, go ahead.
I am seeing along the lines of Chairman Kerr in terms of we could maybe explicitly share the requirement of 300,000 in terms of population. But if, as Delegate Kerr mentioned, it would be burdensome to Charles County as well as a relatively rural area to prescribe these requirements.
Can I just ask, Sharon, so where do they come in from? Because I think of Charles County as being pretty isolated. What neighboring state do these other contractors come in from?
From my understanding, it would probably be Virginia or West Virginia.
To Charles County, West Virginia?
Again, I'm not an expert on that matter, but that's just what I would assume.
Okay, I just thought that the chair and part of his testimony was that he saw this as a big problem locally in his community, and you're saying it's just the opposite. It's not a problem in his community. Okay.
Delegate Shalega?
Well, we could lower the number to 170,000, and then that would include Charles County.
We would then renew the objections from MDOT.
One more thing, Chairman Kerr.
Yes, please go ahead.
And of course, delegates, with all due respect, this bill is a statewide initiative in terms of, reinforcing our workforce. And I appreciate the concerns with Charles County being included. But as Delegate Kerr mentioned, it would be an issue for MDOT and DJS as well.
So when Chairman Wilson put the bill in, he had not yet heard the objections from MDOT and DGS. It was after negotiating with MDOT and DGS that we arrived at the 300,000 and 5 million parameters for determining when this bill would take effect. And I don't think it was his intention to exclude his own county, but after negotiations, that's the way that that we could make the bill work for the most part, for the most people concerned. Any other discussion on the amendment? Delegate Shalega?
So where is ABC on the call?
No.
Where are they on this?
They, well, let me have Tron answer that.
I've not had any active discussions with ABC insofar, but I was assuming they were working in cohort with would that be DJS or MDOT? But we've not gotten any opposition in regards to the amendments as drafted. Lindsay, do you have any insight on that?
I haven't spoken with them.
Yeah, they maybe haven't seen them. We're not voting this out right now, are we?
Well, that was the intention.
Yeah,
which
I'd like to hold it with the amendments and
Okay.
get ABC and Baltimore County to take a look at it. Since
Okay.
it's really not a statewide bill anymore, it's just, a bill on a few counties. Maybe Mako should take a look at it.
Okay, we'll hold the bill until Monday.
Lindsay, is this the reprint that's, not 319 at 958? With
Yeah.
all the latest amendments on it?
Well, it does not include those technical changes that I discussed earlier.
Okay, but did you send them over?
No,
Were
I
they-
haven't.
were they-
I just verbally shared that,
Okay, never mind. All right.
but I
but-
can make those changes and circulate them.
Yeah, that will be great. Thank you. So we can make sure all the parties can take a look at it before we move the bill.
Delegate Hill?
Okay, yes. I'm just looking at my notes and since we held, should we gather data first? No, okay, there was a question that I had about should we consider decreasing the period of disbarment? And it's the same as the bill came in, right? I didn't find a change in the period of disbarment, right? That's still, was it 10 years? Is that right, Lindsay?
It's for a period not exceeding 5 years. The
5 years.
change there is that originally it said if they violate the requirements twice in a 10-year period, and the changes that they have to have violated the requirements 5 times in a 10-year period.
So it's 5 times in a 10-year period.
So if they have a violation 5 times in a 10-year period, then they are subject to debarment for a period not exceeding 5 years.
Okay, and that, I assume those numbers were also negotiated. In other words, 10 years is a lot of time over a long term. Did you guys negotiate that? Was that a negotiated number, Mr. Chair? Or,
No, I don't think that was part of the negotiations.
so that was the other
That
part. I
didn't
mean,
come up as
I think this was an interesting, my concerns as we heard the bill hearing was the tit for tat nature of it. And I think narrowing it, it's a little bit less likely for that. And I just didn't know if we actually had the data. We had members of the committee who, in the questioning and answer period opined that they were seeing this as a problem. Obviously, the sponsor and the panel saw it as a problem. I just didn't know if we had the data and we're moving ahead with this program or this rule. And I was concerned that even the period so 10, so instead of twice in a 10-year period, which I thought was excessive, so now you got to mess up 5 times in a 10-year period to be disbarred for 5 years. I guess my problem is I just think 10 years is a long time to watch somebody's history. I mean, if you keep messing up in a narrow period of time, like if you've made multiple mistakes in a 2-year period, a 4-year or 5-year period, and maybe I'm not thinking about this right, but to look at like let's say it's a company and they had, 3 mess ups the first 4 years and they finally got their act together. And for 5 years, 6 years, they've been doing fine. And that last year they messed up one time. Then it's like, oh, we're going to look all the way back over the last 10 years. And because you messed up, 7 years ago when you were under a different project manager or something, we're now going to disbar you for the next 5 years. There's something maybe, and I guess I'm throwing it out there to see if there's anyone else who's uncomfortable or if I just need to walk away from that piece. I just think looking back for 10 years is a lot.
Anyone else have a comment on Delegate Hill's
I
question?
agree with Delegate Hill.
Okay, so Sharon, could you also look into that before the next time we get together?
Yes, sir, Chairman Kurt. And can you please, Delegate Saliga, can you please just clarify your concerns so I can make a note of them?
Well, it was what Delegate Hill had outlined.
So what I'm saying, Sharon,
No, no, I'm sorry, not that question, Delegate. I understand that aspect of the 10-year period. I'm referring to her request for us to consult Mako and ABC.
Well, the bill as amended to make sure that Mako and ABC have seen the changes that were made to the bill. And to make sure they're okay with it, because it is different than when it came in. Thank you.
Okay, thank you kindly.
Okay, so we'll hold this till our next meeting. Lindsay, let's talk about what is it, 738? And Senate Bill 705?
Sorry, I was still on mute. Actually, Senate Bill 705 hasn't crossed. You do have a reprint of Senate Bill 705 because that's the bill that Vicky was working on the amendments to, but it's still in the Senate. So before you right now is actually just House Bill 738.
738. Okay, please go ahead.
Well, so again, as introduced, this bill was going to expand requirements for 2 annual reports prepared by Do It about the Information Technology Investment Fund. And then I'm going to pass it over to Vicky, who's been working on updates to the amendments, which were circulated to you all earlier during our voting session.
Okay. Thank you. Welcome, Vicky. Please go ahead. You're still muted.
The famous errors online.
Yeah.
So if you start on, I actually numbered the pages in the version that you have. If you start on page 3, I'm hopeful that this will clarify. It seemed like all the semantics weren't matching up. And so what this would clarify, and I don't think it was the intent of the bill to ask the Department of Information Technology to step in and be the project managers for every single project in every single agency. So I was working on a definition of oversight of implementation, and you can see that in the middle of the page on page 3, and defining it as managing the process of implementing a new technology system or project that a unit is doing. So it's essentially managing the process of them implementing, with their expertise, managing the process for an agency of how they get from the beginning to successful execution. And so that's a new definition. But I think it clarifies, hopefully, all of the semantic discussions that we were having up to now. Then if you go forward to page 5, instead of the secretary delegating oversight or implementation, it would simply say this is a part of the secretary's responsibility for managing the process, that they would ensure that no funding is provided unless, and this was current language that you all have already seen, unless there is the appropriate internal capacity to do the project. And then the unit, once they get going, they have to notify BPW and the Legislative Policy Committee who's their management team. Yes, Do It has reviewed and approved this. The head of the unit is acknowledging and accepting accountability for the project, and that they are going to report to Do It with whatever information Do It needs to ensure successful execution. Let me see.
Let me just pause there for a second.
Yep.
Delegate Kaiser, did you want to interject something at this point?
No, I just want to say something after Ms. Gruber finishes. Thank you.
Okay, and while we're here, let me just check with the committee. Is everybody up to speed on what this bill does and how we're proceeding at this point? I know we just kind of jumped right into to the
If you want me,
negotiated changes.
Delegate Kerr, Chair Kerr, if you want me to give some of that initial context of why we're doing this and what's going on before
Would
we
that be,
keep going
would that
forward.
be would that be helpful, committee? Okay, please go ahead.
Yes,
Delegate
please.
Kaiser.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Chair Kerr. Thank you, Vicky, for the details. So this bill started as a bill seeking to get dashboard information and seeing that our IT modernization projects over the last several years have very much overspent, and we have overspent tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars of certain projects. And there hasn't been any, and not just that no one is taking responsibility, is that no one was designed to take responsibility. That there were people watching the money in certain places, but those people didn't have the technical expertise to see were the projects, these big IT modernization projects, were they proper in all the ways that us non-tech people might not understand, but were they working? And then at the same time, DoIT had certain responsibilities, but not any direct oversight. And in years past, when we said, hey, why aren't you doing this? And they're like, well, it's not our job. And clearly it really wasn't anybody. So this bill has been amended to look at all the ways that we can ensure that there's that accountability moving forward. As people may remember and was mentioned at my hearing, OLA did an audit, and I think it was shared at the time, and it highlighted a lot of problems with the processes at DoIT. I know that their initial approach to this bill was to suggest everything should be work grouped, and we very much disagree. The conversations I've had with a few members and along with Ms. Gruber, that it's not enough to do that, but in working on this bill, we've found many points of agreement, several points of compromise, but just pointing out that the new audit that came out today suggests that we can't just wait off to the side. The legislature has to step up and play the role that we're supposed to take in governance and say, no, we don't see some of these things happening. And while I agree you might be doing some of them, let's put them into law. And so I think the time is now, and we have moved several of the things that they want to be work grouped over the interim will now be work group, but some things have to be done. And ultimately, someone needs to be responsible. We all have things in government we wish we could pay for. And in the last 5 or 6 years, and MD Think is the largest example of it. You know how many people we could have fed, provided healthcare to, and supported so many of our other priorities if those projects were managed better. So that's the impetus for this. So I hope that helps somewhat as Ms. Gruber goes back to explaining some of the amendments and how we're trying to put guardrails in place.
Yeah, thanks for that context. I think that was a piece that was missing. So we have had a couple of meetings. The DoIT provided us with a list of 40 points of discussion, and we have been going through those. They also provided us with a summary document, and Vicky has been redrafting the bill to address those discussions and the points of discussion that DoIT had brought up. So
Yep.
let me turn it back to you, Vicky.
Sure. And I would say just broadly, the constructs of this bill are that we're making it clear that the Department of Information Technology, in their oversight of implementation, they're overseeing the process of a unit undertaking one of these IT projects or undertaking implementation of a product. And it gives them the ability to say, well, you can't even start till we determine you have the internal capacity. Then as things are going along, things aren't going well, it looks like you don't have the capacity, then we're withholding funds. And then, thirdly, we're going to increase our ability to assist agencies in these various enterprises is, I think, the best way to explain the bill, a 35-page bill in a nutshell. I don't know, DoIT's on the line. I don't know if they want to.
Okay.
jump
Patrick,
in, but
are you here to speak for Do It today?
I can, and yeah, we really do appreciate all the work, all the back and forth, and we all, I believe that this committee, Vicky and ourselves, are all trying to get to the same goal, and we really appreciate that. We do have a few. Vicky did send us the draft of the new language. We really appreciate that. We did have a few changes that we'd like to see, but I would imagine they'll get cleaned up. But I just wanted to just say our appreciation for the committee to work with us.
Well, thank you. And I should probably point out at this point, we don't intend to take a vote on this bill today.
Okay, fantastic.
This was just to bring the subcommittee up to speed and give
Excellent.
them the weekend to review the bill, and then we'll take it up at our next meeting, which has not been scheduled yet.
Thank you very much.
yeah,
Delegate Kaiser.
Well, because I do think, my understanding is because this was done earlier this morning, and I think Ms. Gruber was looking at more edits or more cleanup, but are we still going through some of the other provisions?
yeah, I'll go through
Okay.
the ones that are new, which are for the most part highlighted in yellow in your versions, because Lindsay already went through the bill as amended. So on page 5, there's language that clarifies the secretary isn't delegating a responsibility for her to do the project management to the agency, but as a part of her responsibility in managing the process, that certain things have to happen. Internal capacity, and then the unit has to say, here's our management team, they have to report. And if they don't, their money not can be withheld, but will be withheld. So rather than just continuing on barreling through a project that we know isn't working, you put the brakes on to see whether or not the project can be redeemed or reworked, re-engaged. And if not, then certain funds can be reallocated. But if funds are going to be reallocated to another project that may be working, it needs be notified to Secretary of Budget and Management, and the Legislative Policy Committee will get notified when funds are withheld, when there's sort of a stop, take a pause. If you continue on to, let's see, actually all the way on to page, we talked about the dashboard at the last meeting. So really the next sort of larger change that Do It had asked for was on page 17. They suggested that a summary of the portfolio maybe wasn't appropriate for what is intended to be a project-based dashboard, and indicated that if a summary document was wanted, that should either be a report in another place, but it didn't fit in a project-based dashboard. So right now it's struck from the project-based dashboard. The next on page 18, the amendments as originally drafted required each agency to embed a Do It employee kind of in the AG model. That's the best way to compare it. Do It asked, they did not believe that was going to be a good model, at least to start with. And so instead, in talking to the secretary, the bill on page 18 creates a new requirement that the CIOs all meet quarterly with the secretary to discuss their projects, any information, any changes in budget, vendor performance, non-performance, changes in scope, schedule, the capacity of the agency to do the project, or any other information that the secretary feels that they need to be able to make a determination of how this project's going. So with that, on pages 19 and let's see how far it goes through 19. The bill originally gave this new Maryland Office of Digital Experience, Independent Procurement Authority. DGS objected to that. So these amendments, these newer amendments, strike the Independent Procurement Authority and add the study of whether or not that should be done to the work group at the end of the bill. On page 21, about the middle of the page, the yellow language, it's clarifying that the requirements of the bill, the funding can come from three sources. One, there's currently in the budget 4.3 million in staff augmentation contracts. And what those are hiring vendors to step into the role as a project manager. And Patrick, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that the hope is to turn those from contractor companies into contractual employees to have more of a connection to what the agencies are doing.
That's correct. Yeah, we're all throughout Do It. We're trying to, as much as possible, move from contractors to either contractual pins or actual pins. So
Got it.
that's correct.
So this,
Can
yeah.
I interrupt? I'm sorry, thank you.
Go ahead, Delegate
Can you
Kaiser.
I'm sorry, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Gruber, can you clarify that this language that you have in yellow, and thank for page numbering like normal people page number for at least this conversation. It won't be there for the floor, unfortunately.
It will
But
not.
that this language on the yellow on the middle of page 21 zeroes out the fiscal note. Is that correct?
That and some language at the end. So this says you can use, there's $121 million right now in the Information Technology Investment Fund. Much of that has been, as always, directed to estimates of these specific projects that we're going to try to do this year. Doesn't require DBM to use those funds, but if there's a determination then that maybe rather than going forward with spending money on a project, maybe we use some of those funds under this bill to do the project right. So you use some of those funds to maybe help prepare the project for success rather than just allocating it. And it is not mandatory, it's optional. And then I know Do It had already planned when an agency is allocated funds for a project, they're also given money for project management, project expertise. And so allowing Do It to use some of those funds that have been given to an agency and say, hey, we're going to help you get this project in good shape, but you're going to use some of your information technology investment funds to reimburse us for the service we're giving you. And I'm getting a nod from Patrick, so I explained that correctly.
That's correct. Yes. I
All
think you're leaning towards the discovery teams.
But yeah, or whatever you guys want to use them for.
Sure. Yes, that's correct.
That are in the bill, right? So this goes, it really doesn't change the Do It's initial concept of a Maryland, a digital service unit and what they would be responsible for. Now, on page 22, just clarifies some of the language of what this new project oversight division would do. And I moved up, there was language about a discovery team further on in the bill. I moved it here because it's my understanding the discovery teams will be in this project oversight division and not more broadly somewhere else. Like and you guys do it, take a look at it, but that was my understanding from your documents. Let's see. So the language on it goes over to page 23 is just it's duplicative and just moved from a later section. And then going through, this gets in on page 24, gets into the contract, the Agile contract that recently passed at the Board of Public Works which is a 10-year contract, master contract of $500 million over 10 years. And this just says that, and it's again getting back to the secretaries that we were talking about in the beginning, the secretary and department's responsibility to manage the processes. But to say if there's a project over $1 million, the unit has to report what's the total contract, if it's over $1 million, what's the total contract amount and the project? Did the secretary of DGS, who's the manager of this particular contract, and do it? Did they determine that, or back to the internal capacity, can this agency do this? Did the unit, has the head of the unit accepted accountability for the oversight and implementation of the project? Who's their management team? And we agree under this, release of funds that we're going to use for this project through the master contract, that we're going to report regularly. That continues us on to.
Hey, Vicky, I know you're going to catch this yourself, but in the middle of that page, just after 3.5-907, that paragraph, I think your $1 million is missing a zero.
Oh, well, don't want to do that.
Good catch.
I like this. Well, that's maybe more fiscally responsible, but million is what was intended.
Okay, thanks. Go
Okay,
ahead.
got it. Thank you. Hey, all no pride of ownership here. Let's see. The bill, as it goes later on, deletes other sections of law that give independent procurement authority. The bill, as Lindsay mentioned, it creates, and this has been asked for by a number of members who have said, we get all these reports, they're all IT, we don't really understand what they mean and how it fits into the budget. So it creates a private sector advisory board to LPC and other entities of the government who will be looking through all these and saying, this makes sense to us, or this doesn't make sense to us, and helping to interpret, what you're looking at and providing a report every year to the General Assembly. Then actually, we're getting closer to the end. Page 32 is the next page. It deletes the Modernized Maryland Commission in the section 2, and the section 3 is the new language that I indicated. That in fiscal year 2026, aside from the transfer of funds we mentioned from the staff augmentation contracts, from agencies, internal investment information, trust fund investment funds, and authorizes the governor to move vacant funded pins, or maybe even a funded pin if he thinks that IT person should be at Do It rather than where they are, gives them the ability to do that. But except for those funds, that no other state general funds can be used to implement the provisions of this act. And it's just, which is, I think, maybe the safeguard a lot of people were looking for. And then, to wrap it up, essentially, if you go to page 33, this is the language authorizing the governor to transfer pins. But again, it's authorizing to meet the provisions of the act. And then this is language, the next piece is section 5. And I know Do It did suggest that this be deleted because it's either in the process of happening or about to happen. But it's essentially that units of state government would work to find economies of scale by having one productivity suite for the state that could be under one license. Right now, most state agencies have independently gotten licenses for both Microsoft and for Google as a productivity suite, and the duplication uh, well, not doing the duplication could save conservatively $10 million, maybe more.
Did you hear that number, Delegate Shalega?
Do you like it? Anyway,
Looking for my unmute. Yay!
but that savings identified through this process of trying to find efficiencies of scale, understanding, and there's provision in here, there's certain agencies that are going to need more than one productivity suite. I'm thinking maybe planning with redistricting, but that for the most part, it's one productivity suite under one license with the economies of scale that come with that and the savings. Then last provision, let's see. Any funds is okay. Well, I don't know. That's about the transfer of funds, but I'll take a look at that. But the last section, section 7, is the work group. So B&T and HGO would do a work group evaluating what this act does, evaluating the duties and what the duties and responsibilities should be for the department, the Office of Digital Service, the Major Information Technology Project Division, Maryland Digital Services, or other offices in the department. And then what, if any, additional actions could or should be taken to ensure an adequate resolution of the audit findings. And then whether it would be efficient or effective. And this has been discussed about, well, should there be a separate project management authority, somebody who is actually going into agencies and managing these IT projects, maybe a quasi-governmental entity? So this just says, would it be efficient and effective if we were to look at other mechanisms for managing state IT projects, including maybe an independent authority? And then whether or not, because we took independent procurement out of the bill, so whether or not additional or independent procurement for IT should be in the department. And then essentially, as I said, is there a way to do things better? So with that, that's where we stand.
Well, the committee is really grateful. I know that this has probably been your entire life for the last week or so. So thank you for all this work. We're very appreciative. Delegate Hill.
Thank you, Vicky, and thank you to the folks from MDOT and the governor's office, everyone for engaging. A quick question, and then I'm really interested in whether we have succeeded in hitting the points that MDOT would be in agreement with. And I don't think General Services is here, but I'm interested in what their feedback is on these changes. The question, Vicky, the dashboard, we took out the part about, we thought the dashboard was not the right place for
the
publishing
summary
portfolio. And didn't we talk about putting that in the work group that they could look about whether the portfolio?
That's a good idea. Yeah, I can add that if everybody feels good. Yeah, the summary there. Yep.
Thanks. Janny Smith and Marcy Jacobs from Maryland Digital Services. Anything you'd like to add at this point?
I really appreciate the collaboration on this, and Vicky, really appreciate the changes. We have been going through, I think there's a lot here that moves this forward, and we have been and continue to be in agreement about materially changing how we work with agencies to implement technology. And we fundamentally agree that there is a real problem that needs to be addressed. We are putting a lot of things in place to start addressing that, and I think this codifies a good amount of that. There are obviously some, I think, small tweaks that we'd want to go through. So we can send over some updated edits and language, but I think this is getting very close. And Vicky, I know you've spent a ton of time on this, and we really appreciate it.
As have you.
Yes.
Jenny, anything to add?
Nothing to add to what Marcy said.
Okay, thanks. Jamie Tomaszewski.
Good afternoon, Delegate, and thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of Department of General Services. We've worked very close with the Department of Information Technology and support all of the amendments that they've suggested, and we're pleased with where this is going and are looking forward to working with everyone on this.
Well,
Thanks.
great. Valerie or Matt from MDOT? Okay, we'll give you a chance. We'll come back to you. Go ahead, Marcy.
I guess one outstanding question that I have is around timeline. We are working on rolling out these changes. We have already started with about 8 agencies and taking a much more load-bearing approach with those agencies to get them to the standards. But I'm curious, there isn't really a timeline set out in here as we're kind of rolling out some of the changes to oversight reform over the next 18 months. The pace of change is something that I just want to make sure that we align on. That was a lot of the kind of the fiscal note came from an assumption that we were going from where we are to full kind of management and taking over all these projects immediately. If the intent is that all of these changes are rolled out very quickly, I think there still will be some fiscal impact to get this ramped up quickly.
I mean, there aren't dates in here, which as an agency, maybe that's better. But I mean, if there's a point in time like December 1, how far are you along in implementing or something like that? I mean, I don't know if that would add comfort for the members and for the department.
I think we're happy to provide progress reports of where we are at certain milestones, and we can show the progress. This won't be we work on this in a corner without any transparency, and then at the end, tell you what we've done. So we're comfortable with that. But Jenny, it looks like you have additional comments.
Yeah, go ahead, Jenny.
I was just going to say, thank you, Chair. We'd be happy to send recommendations for timelines on some of these with the notes that we're going to send shortly.
Great. Back to you, Delegate Hill.
Yeah, so that was it. I was going to just ask Vicky, though. I thought that to a great extent, the assumption is that the ongoing changes that DO-IT is already engaged in, the projects they've already started, and the changes in how they approach these things and work with the different agencies and units, that would be ongoing, that there's nothing about this bill that should interfere or delay what they're already doing. And that our understanding is, if anything, it puts the impetus back on these units and agencies, both that you're working with now and that you'll be working with in the future, to go ahead and get their chief, technology officer on board. Am I misunderstanding that, Vicky?
I mean, I think I think we're all saying the same thing, and maybe the first progress report is, here's what we've done already under the plan that we presented to you during session, and that's the first sort of progress report. And then, the second one or the third one can go into what is now happening or has happened because of other authority given under this bill.
Delegate Kaiser.
Lastly, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to thank everyone from Ms. Gruber to everyone who's worked on this staff-wise, to also you, certainly, Mr. Chairman, but also to, I just want to make sure that everyone is aware of Delegate Hill's big brain and how she's been so helpful in all this. So thank you.
Yes, she certainly has. Melissa Ross from the Governor's Office.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and the members of the subcommittee, and especially Vicky. I want to thank you. There's been so much back and forth on this bill. Just want to thank you for all of your hard work and attention to detail and willing to work with us. It does feel like there's a lot of forward momentum here, so that's really exciting. But we did just receive this draft, so if possible, would it be okay for DO-IT to take a look at the draft over the weekend and maybe send Vicky some fine-tuning adjustments?
Yeah, that's the plan, is
Okay.
that we wanted to bring the subcommittee current on the status of the bill and the negotiations that have been going on, but not take any action today.
Okay,
Just
Great.
identify the outstanding issues, and if we can, work on them over the weekend or the first part of next week. And then, so I would ask everybody to just continue to check your telephones and your email in case we do have reason to get together on Monday and consider continue the conversation. Any final thoughts, questions, or comments before we adjourn?
Go Terps. The ladies play at 5.
Okay. Then, all right. Thanks, everybody. Great work.
Thank you.
I
Thank you,
think
Mr.
this-
Chairman.
You're welcome. I'll see everybody soon. We are adjourned.
Thank you.